So if the soul and spirit body attaches to the physical body at conception,
yeah.
What are implications of this in certain cases? So there's a number of cases I'd like to ask you about. So if we start with in vitro fertilization practices.
Yes, well, you can see straight away that there's many, what you would classify as medical procedures or practices that we engage in modern human society that obviously are fraught with some issues regarding ethics and morality, as well as issues regarding what actually physically occurs and why certain things physically occur as well. Mm-hmm. So with in vitro fertilization, for example, we've now got a process that's being managed outside of the human body in many cases, mm-hmm. Where the conception process occurs, where the two bodies, the physical and the spiritual body, are created, and the replication process begins. Now, at that point in time, the young soul, the unincarnate soul, now becomes incarnated. So there is now one half of a full soul now incarnate into that and now connected to that particular fertility process. Mm-hmm. And this is why, you know, some fertilization attempts die, is because obviously those souls haven't connected. The soul is not connected. And so naturally those particular attempts die off. So they're not able to sustain life. Mm-hmm. But if the soul does connect, now you could say that the soul is now connected to the fertile egg and sperm combination, which is now causing the separation process, the division process to begin to create the human from the genetic structure, and now the soul is actually connected to that particular form, the embryo, if you like, and now you could consider it to be individualized from that moment on. The problem, of course, with that is that what we do with that medically. And what we often do with that medically is we store it, quite often freeze it, sometimes for many years. And during that period of time now, that little soul is not connected to parents, has no awareness yet of who it's going to be connected to, and it's almost like in a state of suspended animation without its own choice being engaged.
So just to clarify, if we backtrack a bit, just to summarise, basically with the process of in vitro fertilisation or in vitro practices, the egg of the woman and the sperm of the man are actually joined external to a physical process and external to a physical body.
Yeah, external to the mother, in other words. They're taken out, joined together, put back in the womb.
Yes, put back in and
hopefully they take. Yes. Is the key, with it connect to the womb's wall and connect to have the ability to sustain growth.
Yeah. And then in some cases, as you were saying, there might be a couple of embryos, if you like, where the cell reproduction has started and embryo is frozen for a period of time.
Yep.
So just a bit of clarification on those two things. Basically, you're saying that once an embryo has created, which means that there has been a union between the cells in the sperm and eggs.
Yes, and the replication process is now established. You're saying that embryo has now a soul attached. It doesn't occur when it enters the womb of a woman? No.
So, but obviously the embryo needs the womb of a woman because it's not possible to gestate a child outside of the womb of a woman.
Not at the moment. Of course, in the future, with future medical changes, people may make that possible.
Yeah. But you're saying that the soul is attached at that moment, the embryo comes into being, not when it's in the womb of a woman.
Yes.
Yes.
And thereafter, we need to take care with our decision making, obviously, because from that moment on, you're making a decision for somebody else who does not have the ability to tell you what they want.
Yeah.
But of course, God's designed instinctual things that they would want. And some of those instinctual things are love, compassion, consideration, sympathy, and desire for them to live and survive and thrive. And these kind of things they would naturally receive from the emotional state of the parents under normal circumstances. But in the case of an embryo that's now in a stasis period, if you like, of its development before it's been implanted in the womb, it now does not have those things.
Yeah.
And so now there are ethical and moral things that need to be considered with regard to how we treat those particular souls, if you like, that are now attached to those newly forming bodies.
Yeah.
And this is where I see there's a lot of unethical choices made, and actually choices which later on result in the persons making these choices having to later compensate for them from God's perspective, because every unloving choice we make naturally will result in a consequence of some kind that will correct it. And unfortunately, a lot of the choices made in this regard are all about addictions in many cases, like people needing to have their own child, their own progeny. Yeah. There are literally millions of children on this planet who do not have parents, or who do not have caring parents, who could easily be given to another parent. Yeah. But because of our addictions of needing our own children and our own guiding hand over those children, and very frequently it means some level of ownership that parents try to express over children. We have a lot of distorted ideas about and also distorted ideas about medical procedures that we should be able to do in order to get one of these children for ourselves. Yeah,
and a lot of money and time is actually placed into furthering these technological advances that enable these things to happen, because they're so driven by those emotions that you just referred to, these sort of addictive kind of compulsive emotions within many men and women.
Yes.
About having your own children.
Yes, and the addictive compulsion drives then a lot of unethical choices when it comes to the human soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of considerations to make if a person's considering in vitro fertilization. And there's a lot of alternatives they could have if they were truly caring about children, rather than having to engage in vitro fertilization. That being said, of course, there are strict controls governmentally worldwide about having another person look after your child, and having another person look after children is often looked down upon. So the whole concept of the human family is already distorted. That causes these kind of problems in lots of different ways. So, if we didn't have a distorted view of the human family, we would have no trouble having a teenage pregnant girl, having a child. And if she wanted to keep it, she would keep it, and we'd help her keep it. And if she doesn't want to keep it and she wants to another parent because she doesn't feel up to keeping it, and no one would look down upon her for doing that. She's making a decision in the best interest of the child. And no one would look down upon the child or the parents who weren't the actual biological parents, as we call them, of the person. The reality is God is the biological parent of all human souls. And really that's the only consideration that matters here.
Yeah. It strikes me that because there's so many varying standards of what it is to treat a child well globally amongst the human race.
Yes.
That's why people get so picky about children being almost raised in a community of, if you were raised within a community or a society of people who had very similar, if not same, understanding of love, ethics and morality, then you would be safe to be raised by anyone, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't need...
Yeah, in practice, I suppose, that everyone's going to be in different conditions of love, and you would certainly need to consider the condition of love of a prospective parent before a child is given to the parent to look after. But at the end of the day, having so much monetary things and other things and family things attached to it is where we run into a lot of strife.